Well, I've noticed a subtle trend towards doxing in New Zealand by the legacy news media, but it depends on who the person is and what they're protesting about, and it seems whether the media like them or not. Let's check it out. So have you heard of doxing? According to Wikipedia, doxing is the act of publicly providing personally identifiable information about an individual or organisation, usually via the internet and without their consent. In other words, it's a form of online harassment or online bullying. It's designed to have a chilling effect on both the person and anyone else who may think or act like the victim of the doxing. Now, in one of the more disturbing examples, in 2022, the New York Post reported militant pro-choice activists doxed the 6 Supreme Court justices that are expected to dismiss Roe v. Wade, publishing their partial addresses online as part of a planned protest. At least one activist group is already planning a more direct attack, taking the protest direct to the homes of the 6 justices expected to dismiss the long divisive federal right. It even included a map pinpointing homes, 3 in Virginia, 3 in Maryland, where the 6 Christian fundamentalist justices issue their shadow docket rulings from. And in fact, a California man faced a charge of attempted murder after his arrest near the home of conservative Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was appointed by Trump in his first term. So that's pretty concerning. But I've noticed a subtle trend towards doxing in New Zealand by the legacy news media, mainly towards the employer in an attempt to get them cancelled. So not so much their home, but their place of employment. But it depends on who the person is and what they're protesting about. And it seems whether the media like them or not. Let me show you some examples. So example number 1. Remember the protest against drag queens reading LGBT books in libraries to children in Te Atatu? Now look, you may or may not agree with that protest, and those that allegedly broke the law have been charged. But one of the people present was a father and also a member of the media, a Pacifica music station. Now he's not been charged with anything. He was simply there expressing, that's my understanding, he hasn't been charged with anything. He was there simply expressing his concerns about drag queens influencing children, a concern that many of us share. But because the protest was deemed to be against the cultural religion of the LGBT plus agenda, he was targeted by a New Zealand Herald report. And it said this: a popular radio personality was among those involved in a Destiny Church protest at a children's event that turned violent at the weekend. Video circulating on social media appears to show New FM's Bailey Palala among a group of Destiny Church protesters gathered outside the Auckland Library on Saturday. The radio personality can be seen wearing a Real Men shirt and holding an infant over his shoulder as he chats with demonstrators before they entered the building as part of the second wave of protesters. And in a follow-up report, they said, Palala is a group leader at the Destiny Church affiliated group, the Radical Youth. Its social media page posted photos of him baptizing teenagers on Friday. No, how dare he? How dare he? Now, look, it's important to note this guy attended the protest, but was not charged with anything. He was simply present at the protest with his child, whether you agree with it or not. There'll be some protests you agree with and some you don't, but he was not charged with anything. So as a father, he was there protesting against drag queens, an adult expression of LGBT communities associated with strip dancing, sexuality, cross-dressing, sexualized content, adult entertainment, but reading LGBT books to children. Let me reiterate, whether you agree with the protest or not, this guy did not break the law. He was exercising his right to protest. But the media love drag queens, don't they? And they hate anyone who may stand against them and the normalization of them to vulnerable children. So it was game on. Doxing of his name and his profession, as you can see, and the company he works with. And he was subsequently sacked. Actually, I hope he's getting good legal advice. And then there was a grovelling apology from his colleagues on New FM. Now, have a listen because their contradictory statements are quite amazing and pathetic.
No secret about what's been going on here at the station, but I feel like not saying anything publicly to our listeners live on air would be a disservice to everyone. Obviously, there was an event that went down over the weekend that involved someone who is a part of our team. We are doing things behind the scenes and things are happening contractually and legally. We can't really talk about what's going
We can't really talk about it, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
On New FM, we've always been advocates of everybody.
Oh, advocates of everybody, just not their colleague who doesn't like kids being sexualized by drag queens.
Yeah, all the hard work that we've done prior shouldn't be taken away from one person's choice or their beliefs.
Choice or beliefs that they don't agree with, by the way.
Doxxing Reads have worked really hard over the years. Don't let that cloud your judgment on what the good people are trying to do.
What the good people are doing. Is she referring to those trying to protect the kids from sexualization? Yeah, okay.
Do in the sense of, what we are still here fighting for our people. And we're so sorry that, there are people in our community who face these sorts of things on a daily basis.
What we will do and continue to do is advocate for the LGBTQ community and continue to support and love anyone and everyone from different backgrounds and diversities.
Support and love everyone from different backgrounds and diversities. Can't they hear their complete inconsistency and hypocrisy? They'll support them as long as they agree with them. The interesting thing is that they posted this video and it says there that there were 28 comments, but when you click on the post, the comments have gone. They've done a New Zealand Herald and they've hidden the comments they don't appear to agree with. And I suspect that they were all going against the grovelling apology. Classic. But example number 2. Now, One News decided that a group who were opposing rainbow crossings in Wellington were the bad people, even if they were concerned about the safety aspect, as their lawyer was arguing. So One News checked out the complainants. And let me show you their report, including our wonderful One News reporter tracking down lots of people who apparently love rainbows on the road. Okay, some quality reporting as usual in this one.
Public health boss has swiftly withdrawn from taking part in legal action against the rainbow crossing in Wellington after One News questioned his involvement. The Ministry of Health says its Director of Pacific Health, Dr. Junior Ulu, didn't want his participation in the case to be misinterpreted. Here's senior political reporter Benedict Collins with this exclusive.
On Wellington's Cuba Street this morning, it was hard to find anyone with a bad word to say about this rainbow crossing.
I think it's great. A bit of colour, it adds to the area and it supports the rainbow community, and I'm always up for that.
For sure, my kids love it. They always love to see something colourful there.
Oh yes, kids love rainbows, by the way.
Yeah, it's good to have the inclusivity, especially on this kind of street.
Tourists love it too.
I think it's pretty, it's beautiful. So we just take some pictures here.
It's pretty and beautiful, therefore they must support the campaign.
Nothing wrong with it. I think it's wonderful.
But rainbow crossings have been under attack around the country recently by Destiny Church members, along with the rainbow community. In Wellington this week, there's been a court case taken by church members challenging this crossing's legality and safety. One of those behind the litigation, the Ministry of Health's Director of Pacific Health, Dr. Junior Ulu.
Hi, I'm Junior and I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the classes that we offer on a Monday night here at Destiny Church Wellington through Breakout Monday.
One News contacted the Ministry of Health today and asked if we could talk to Dr. Ulu about why he is taking such court action and whether it was appropriate for him to be doing so. And while he wouldn't talk to us, just a couple of hours later the Ministry got back in touch and said he'd decided to step away from those court proceedings.
Well, firstly, I understand he has withdrawn from that case. That's what I've been advised. But finally, I'm advised he was doing this in his personal capacity, not as an employee of the Ministry of Health.
Public servants are required to be politically impartial. The ministry says Dr. Ulu told them he was only involved because he was concerned about people's safety at the crossing and withdrew when he realised his motives could be misinterpreted. Benedict Collins.
Yes, that was one of the key arguments about the safety aspect. But look, this is someone in their private capacity. Apparently, they can't be involved in a legal action that goes against the holy grail of LGBT. Really? Well, the answer is no. They can be. Of course they can. But that last statement is the key that the reporter made. Public servants are required to be politically impartial. Really? Well, that's real interesting, because let's move on to our third example, because One News may have just shot themselves in the foot with their hypocrisy. And credit to the New Zealand Herald for consistently doxing, although in this case, it wasn't the protests they disagreed with. I think they were keen to call out the bias of another news agency. But remember how our intrepid reporter, Benedict Collins from One News, said, quote, public servants are required to be politically impartial. Well, last December, the New Zealand Herald reported this. One of TVNZ's most senior executives and the person considered most likely to fill the broadcaster's proposed new supercharged news and content executive position has taken annual leave this week to attend and support the North Island hikoi, the protest. TVNZ Chief Content Officer her presence in a personal capacity at the hikoi, as well as several posts on her Instagram social media account, has caused consternation amongst some staff, but TVNZ has defended her position. Just 3 months ago, the state broadcaster was championing the importance of the impartiality of its newsroom, releasing an editorial policy to enhance its transparency and inspiring trust in the news. Hey Benedict, I thought public servants were required to be politically impartial. Did One News dox their own protester? Well, no. But interestingly, the left-wing spin-off website came to her defence, and also another Radio New Zealand reporter who were both on the hikoi. And spin-off said, the message is clear: if you work in journalism, you shouldn't have personal opinions. Or if you do, at least have them in private. If not, expect trust in your ability to report the news to diminish. Here's a personal opinion for you. That's BS, and always has been. And to suggest that voicing an opinion in a personal capacity reflects an inability to be impartial in a news setting is giving away one's own bias, when that question only ever seems to hang over Māori, this particularly Māori woman. No one is impartial, we all have a position on everything. Well, note how they bring in the race issue. Of course, some critical theory there. But I'm looking for the spin-off's defence of our new FM friend, who also has a personal opinion about protecting children. Can anyone direct me to the article by spin-off protecting his rights? Example number 4. During the Wellington LGBT parade a couple of weeks ago, a group from Destiny turned up to do a haka. Now, once again, rightly or wrongly, that's their freedom of expression. Most groups can do hakas except for Destiny, which is kind of interesting. But one of the key opponents was identified as a foul-mouthed public servant who works for the Ministry of Primary Industries. Now, let me just show you a bit of it. I've deliberately fuzzed out her face, and I've also removed all of the foul and objectionable language, including the C word, which actually doesn't leave much to listen to. Because while I oppose her demeanour and her language, I'm actually not into this doxing thing too much. But this is a public servant protesting. There's a lot of beeping there, I was busy. Here's the question. Did the news media report this and ask why she wasn't being politically impartial as a public servant, like they did with our Pacifica Health Ministry person, or the new FM host? Oh, you probably know the answer to that one. Oh, and one more example. Over the weekend, this is example number 5. Over the weekend, a smallish gathering of gender activists who are wanting to chemically castrate children with puberty blockers gathered at Parliament grounds. It was covered by Radio NZ, New Zealand Herald and News Talk ZB. Although not surprisingly, and typically Radio NZ and the New Zealand Herald didn't allow comments on their Facebook posts. See down the bottom there, no scope for comments. And that's because the arguments for puberty blockers are so weak, so that they have to shut down any dissent. But, you know my question, eh? Did they check to see if anyone from the public service attended that protest? I mean, I bet there was. It was in Wellington, and I bet there were lots of blue-haired people there. But did Benedict Collins from One News do an investigation? Because remember, he said public servants are required to be politically impartial. Did the New Zealand Herald search through the crowd for people to dox? No, because they support the protest. They support puberty blockers. They support the madness of gender ideology, which is harming our children. And they turn up to small puberty blocker campaigns, but we've never seen them at much larger marches for life. Look, here's the key thing. If the media are going to go down the track of doxing protesters who are exercising their free speech and freedom of association, which, by the way, I think is highly problematic and designed to get people to not speak up where they go out to dox them, then the media need to be consistent and not just focus on the protests or the protesters that they disagree with. But this is all designed to have a chilling effect of deterring people from speaking up against things like LGBT, drag queens, abortion, and other liberal causes being pushed in our culture. They want you to keep quiet. Don't.